Today's video, we're going to be traveling to Themyscira as we have a look at the Hot Toys Wonder Woman Training Armor version 6-scale figure. Wonder Woman here depicted in her training attire is product code MMS424 and comes to us from the folks over at Hot Toys. Before we have a look at the figure and her accessories, let's first figure out how tall Wonder Woman stands. So I'm going to put that right to the top of her head, which is roughly about there. Stopping it, you'll see that the figure is exactly 12 inches in height, or to switch that over to centimeters, you're looking at 30.6 centimeters in height. She comes with a display stand, a much smaller display stand than the one that came with the Batman v Superman release of her. That one was, well, I'll show you that in a second, but this one here is more rectangular. It almost seems to follow the same suit as the Suicide Squad releases, in the sense that you've got a rectangular display base, which kind of has like a grassy terrain there, slightly faded, but a grass terrain there, and then this dirt facing in which she's standing atop of. I'll show you why that is in a second. But it's similar to the Suicide Squad release in the sense that you've got this front placard, much bigger and taller than the base itself. It's basically just a plaque that goes around the front. In this instance, we don't have treated Suicide Squad deco, but instead a raised, elevated Wonder Woman logo, which I quite like, and also a series of stars, 3 to be exact, raised stars there as well. And on the front, you've got Wonder Woman Training Armor version. It's actually a little harder to make out the font because they've slightly distorted it, given it almost sort of a rough sort of paint application here. And as a result, though, some of the font, as you can see, has just been worn off. Intentionally worn off. It's printed that way, but it does make things a little bit harder to make it out as opposed to if it was just a solid yellow font. We'll move the figure over slightly, and just again going back to why you've got that grass at the end of it, she does also come with the same style of cardboard standees as what we've also seen with the Suicide Squad releases. So here in the back, just before I put the display base in front of it, you've got the very edge cliff of one of the Themysciran hilltops, and then in the distance there you can see Steve's plane about to crash. The image looks good from a distance. From a distance, I don't seem to see as much the blurry problem that I have with it as much as when you look at it at close range. I guess the intent is it's supposed to be something that you're going to see from a far glance, But really, when you look at it real close, the image seems slightly distorted. In fact, I'll just bring the camera up a little bit there. It's hard to really make out what it's supposed to be. Obviously, you know it's a plane. If you've seen the movie, you also know that these are rock facings. But it seems slightly distorted, the image itself. I don't know if I would actually favor it being a crystal clear image. Again, it's supposed to be something that ideally is in the background here, with the display base being in the foreground. We go ahead and take the figure and we can just perch her on top like so. And it's a nice finishing presentation. A lot of this, mind you, is based on the mileage of how much space you have in your detolf. I don't really have a lot of space, and really where I'm planning on putting her is likely going to be occupied already by the Batman, the Superman, and the Wonder Woman from the Batman v Superman line, so I probably will leave this part off. This back card really works exceptionally well if you have all your 6-scale figures on shelving rather than detolfs. As detolfs go, I don't think it's necessarily something that you really could put in a detolf cabinet, because it really just takes up too much space. Obviously do some justice as well. I'm going to bring in the Wonder Woman that we've already looked at on this channel. You'll probably see some comparisons with her over the course of this review, but I just wanted to bring her in specifically, at least at this time, just to also show you the display base that would have came in with this particular figure. Much broader, one could certainly admit. You've got the raised, or in this case, it's flat, but you could raise the Batman v Superman logo. And then she's got the placard, the silver placard on the front. I mean, it's a nice showpiece. Part of me really does like the 6-scale figures, however, that do have the smaller bases. Let me just take her off again for a second here. Again, my concern is actually more space than anything else. I selfishly say that just because I want to put as many of these cool figures together as I possibly can. Rectangular bases work and really benefit in that means, because I can put about 4 per shelf. When you get to the larger, broader bases like this, it does certainly limit what you can do, and it really limits the number of figures that you can put in that shelf. Don't worry, we are going to bring the Batman v Superman Wonder Woman back into this review, probably a couple of times more, because we do some comparisons left and right with this one and the previously released one. Again, this one here is the Wonder Woman depicted at the very beginning of the movie, or really, let me backtrack that a little bit. It's not quite the beginning of the movie, because what we are treated to at the beginning is a young Diana watching the Amazonians and training herself. And over the course of a video montage, we eventually get the much older Diana, pretty much around the point in which she's going to first see Steve. But here we have her in her training Amazonian outfit, sporting a really nice metallic gold, almost bodice top here. It looks like it would actually have been forged metal, like a metal plating. And then below that, she has a skirt. The skirt itself has an accordion to it, like an overlapping fabric to one another. If you look really close, and kind of neat, up close it almost kind of looks like either like a reptile skin or even like a leopard print. It's small, it's so very small and almost hard to make out, even from a distance. From a distance it actually just reads as gold, but when you look really close at it, do you see the very intricate patterns that they would have put into the material itself. It's slightly raised on a cut here around one of her thighs, and then of course just kind of runs its way around the lower torso of Diana here. Like I said, going back to the top, though, the top's got some really nice detailing here. You would imagine that this would have been something that they would have forged by hand or certainly by tool to create something like this. You have all these kind of little fibrous textures that make up the majority of the top. It doesn't look like it has secondary colors. Instead, it seems more like the lighting is just kind of catching it in certain ways, that it looks like it's slightly darker around the like the chest area here, but it really doesn't seem to be the case at all. On the side, you've got essentially where it would attach or close itself off. This isn't something that you can open. It's just the way it was sculpted in place. And then she's got the strapping here, which works its way up around the shoulder and around to the back section here as well. That same similar color, which again kind of looks like a reptile print skin. also makes its way around as a belt. It's a rather interesting design because on the back it reads as a belt, and then as it works its way to the front, it really just kind of tapers off and then wraps its way around here. It almost has like a serpent-like flow to it, the way it wraps its way around Diana's torso here. As for the figure's face sculpt, it is gorgeous. This is, of course, the second Wonder Woman that was released, the third being a Justice figure release, which, coincidentally enough, as we're having a look at this figure right now, I've got the installment plans. I think I'm about 2 payments away from getting the Justice League release of Wonder Woman, and certainly when she comes, we'll be having a look at her. I do like this particular head sculpt. Dare I almost say I like this head sculpt a little bit more than I liked the Batman v Superman one. And I think the reason why I like this one just a little bit more is the face, the almost more angry or determined face on this particular Wonder Woman, I think reads better than the one we actually got before. Of course, that means, of course, we're going to segue ourselves to the original Batman v Superman release. I almost feel like she's a little... I don't know what it is. I think I like this particular head sculpt. If I could only just have taken this head off, popped it off, replaced the hair, I think I would have used this head sculpt for this one here. There's nothing to be saying necessarily negative about this particular head sculpt, but I almost feel like it's... I don't know, it almost seems to have a little bit more of a lifeless expression, if that means anything, versus this one right here. This one, you've got a determined Diana. You've got a more serious... just like a more serious expression on her face. I think the eyebrows, especially like the eye portion right here, I think looks more like Gal Gadot. Again, not saying that this one does not look like Gal Gadot, but something when you compare the two head sculpts together, this one seems so much closer that by comparing the two, this one seems a little bit more off. Obviously, one of the other big differences is that the training attire, Diana also uses a plastic hair, braided down to the back of her hair as a sole singular ponytail, whereas the one from Batman v Superman here used, of course, real doll hair. It's debatable, of course, whether plastic could have been a necessary means to have this particular hair successful. I still think this figure is one of the best examples of a Hot Toys that actually needed real doll hair to be successful. Of course, here you couldn't pull off the same look. Tightening back doll hair, I think, would ultimately just kind of give her a slightly more afro or slightly more pillowy looking top here. Plastic is definitely the way to go. Now, though, it being the fact that they did use plastic, I still think I would have darkened the hair a little bit. Especially at the beginning of the movie where she's in this attire. I feel like her hair is almost a jet black. The hair here reads almost a little bit lighter than a jet black. It's not to say that the hair sculpt isn't glorious, but I do think I would darken it just ever so slightly. As a side note, what I really do like is it's these small, tiny little hairs that are not quite the hairs that are being caught by the pulled back ponytail. This braid is getting the majority of the hair, but it's just these little slight indications of hair around the forehead area that really gives it the sense of life. From what I can really tell, looking at the two bodies as well of the two Wonder Women, if you will, it does seem like they are utilizing the exact same mold. I don't see any differencing between the two, other than, of course, the swap out of clothing from one to the other. The seamless body seems to be a pretty successful accomplishment with Wonder Woman, and I've actually noticed even as well, like, holding this one and moving her joints, I think that initial fear of, oh my god, I'm going to break something, I think has kind of tapered off. With this one, I kind of held literally at times with like cloth gloves, thinking I was going to do some damage to the actual body itself. But since then, I've gotten a little bit more relaxed with the way I'm posing her. I mean, I'm not going to certainly pose her to the extreme where I've got her legs stretched and her arms in, you know, in extreme bent poses. But I do think since having this one, I've become a little bit more relaxed when it comes to moving this particular figure. It's not to say, of course, that you still can't be careful. There's certain extremes when it comes to how far up, how far forward you can bend the arm. The best advice I can certainly make is when you are moving her arms, do it at a very slow pace, and just kind of get a read for where the joint is. You can kind of start feeling a little bit of resistance, and that's immediately telling you that you may want to stop pushing it any further than what it is. But she does have a good range of motion. I'll talk a lot about all that when we get to the articulation on the figure. In the meantime, a couple of other things we can look at is the gauntlets that are on the sides of her arms here. She comes with two versions, as did the Batman v Superman release. It's this one, and then there is the charged up version as well, which, as you can see, is a little bit more of a translucent plastic versus the just solid painted plastic. It again depends on whereabouts you want to display the figure, at least from taking what point in the scene, as she really only is using this near the end when she is fighting her aunt, and that's again when she charges this up. Again, it's really nice. I don't think there is any difference between this one and the one that came with the Batman v Superman release. Caution should be a little bit more expressed here. Again, you're really only going to be taking the figure's hand off, and then you're going to be sliding the gauntlet off and replacing it with this one. So you're really not going to be putting a whole lot of pressure on it. But I will say though, being that it's plastic and it is of the clear variety, you just don't want to put a lot of pressure on it. If anything, put the pressure on it once it's been slid onto the forearm and when you're replacing out the hand here. One of the things I've noticed though about the hands, I'm just going to slide this off for the time being, being the nature that she's using the seamless body, I do find that it's tricky at times to get her hands plotted and placed into the socket. A lot of times you may notice a little bit of the flesh, if you will, kind of just bunching up around the bottom area in which it attaches to the wrappings of her hand here. Also, when you are changing out the hands, I've also noticed too that it does help a little bit to just kind of grab the gauntlet a little bit and see if you can bring it up as far as you can, just to give you enough clearance to get the hand in there. If you look at where the glove ends and the gauntlet begins, it doesn't give you a whole lot of clearance to get in there and attach the hand. And oftentimes, I do find like the gauntlet, and couple that with the forearm, I do find sometimes pushes these hands off. But if you get a good firm gripping of it and you push it right in, just kind of wiggle it in there as well, the hand seems to stay in place. One little part I am concerned about is the strap here. What it is it's basically like one, I'm assuming it'd be like a leather-like material, and then it has been strapped around the back section of her leg. This whole section here is an open area, which actually does look good, but I feel like in the front I'm a little worried, and even like the instructions indicate this as well, that you don't want to do some excessive twisting, especially like right there. If you twist it too far, you do run the risk that that could rip. And it actually does seem to have almost a slightly irregular shape to it. This one is not as bad, but it does still have the same sort of issue. You really don't want to be twisting the feet in any excessive or quick jerking motions, as you do really don't want to cause any bit of damage to this part and this part of the boot here. Okay, so let's have a look at Wonder Woman's accessories. Even though we really already touched base on this, she does come with a pair, and actually rather, she comes with two pairs of bracelets of submission. That's actually the term that they've given these particular gauntlet bracelets. She comes with the see-through or transparent orange versions of it, and then she comes with the silver versions that she's currently wearing. She also comes included with a training shield, which is a different shield than the one that comes with the Batman v Superman release. Generally a very dark brown shield with some rather nice gold accents around the outer area, and then she has a starburst, or I should say the shield has a starburst effect. I really like the slotted nature, the texturing that they've done on the interior there around the inner points of the starburst. We flip it around, and then there is almost like a hammer forged out gold inner ring, and then she's got the leather strappings that are going to, essentially you're going to run her arm through that, and then she's going to grab it on the other end here. These are a little bit on the softer variety. A little bit of extra give certainly can go a long way when having her holding the shield. Also gets herself a bow. The bow is quite long, actually. It goes to about her waist, and of course has a real cord. This can come in certainly handy when you want to have her displayed actually as if she's firing off the bow and arrow like we did at the very beginning of this review. The bow is otherwise colored here in a almost metallic gold, but then peeking its way through, you've got a little bit of that darker brown. It's actually almost the same similar brown as the one that came with the shield here. And then she'll come with a series of arrows. Now looking at the arrows, she does come with 3, but they're identical to one another. In fact, looking at them, there's nothing different between the 3, whether the feathers nor the tips themselves are all identical. So we'll just put these 2 to the side because there's really not a lot, no reasoning really to look at 3 identical ones. And we'll just focus some efforts right now to have a look at this one. Some nice banding that they've added to the actual stem portion of the arrow, incorporating some nice metallic reds and some golds there. Almost even seems as if there's a little bit of a darker color there, but I think it's just the majority. I think it's just the actual stem of the arrow. The actual feathered portion, the end portion of the arrow here, looks like it's been painted primarily in gold, and then they've put some slash colorings there of that cranberry color. It looks actually quite good. And then the tip itself, this is actually pretty cool. And it's funny that I'm so interested in the tip of an arrow. I just want to show you the level of detailing and paint that they added to just the tip. Looking at the tip, it's not just one color, but 2. And it does almost look like it's like just got this forged out, hammered out tip to it. It's almost crude, but in the sense it gives it more a realistic look to it. Then she gets herself an engraved sword. Speaking of engravings, hopefully you can see it. There is the scripture, the Amazonian writings down the entire length, really the entire length of the sword, starting at the hilt, working its way down to the tip. Then within that, you've got an interior panel lining, and then hopefully the camera is going to be able to pick it up appropriately. Yeah, there it is. You can see all these little indentations, as if someone's hammer actually had forged this out. Very impressive. As impressive, if not more impressive, is the hilt of the sword. It almost looks like dragons that are grabbing onto the blade. They have been forged in gold. There's some kind of decorative on the interior there. And then the actual handle is a combination of the metallic golds and then the wrappings there of the dark brown. And there's the end of the sword. Really beautiful piece. While we're on the topic of swords, she also comes with this very cool spherical sword stand. The sword places itself, I don't know if you can see it right there, there's a little slot. You just take the end of the blade and attach it into place. Granted, it's not the most secure. It would certainly benefit as well if I didn't move it around or I didn't have it in my hand. It does balance the sword, but it doesn't stay all that well. Once you've got it on a firm, flat surface, the sword's obviously not going to go anywhere. But it does. I just want to say, though, that it does sit a little on the loose side if you are picking it up, which is probably not something you want to be doing. The stand itself is actually just cast in gold plastic. I really do like how it's got these twists, these spiraling twists leading up to the center point in which the sword places itself into. It's definitely going to be a top contender for an accessory that's going to accompany Wonder Woman on my display shelf. She also gets herself a bandage, which if you are watching the movie, she doesn't have during the actual training, rather after the training, they add this bandage to her. For that reason and that reason alone, I'm probably never going to display her with it, but I just want to show you. Just take the hand off like so, slide off the gauntlet, and then this just sort of slides on top of that. And then you can really revisit all the other stuff that you've got going on there, including putting the hand back into place. Again, it's there. It's certainly movie accurate. I don't think I'd ever really display her with it, just primarily because the way I'm going to be displaying her is likely while she is training, and again, not so much the after effects. She also gets herself a series of interchangeable hands. Currently, I've just got her defaulted to the close fists, but she has a pair of gripping hands, ideally for holding the bow, ideally for holding the sword, ideally for holding the shield. She does also have a hand specific for holding the arrow. Let me talk about that in a second. And then she's also got a pair of relaxed hands. Just before, don't worry, I'm going to talk about this in a second. I just want to show you this hand. You'll notice that there's a peg already in place. Hot Toys gives you a pair, so 2 extra pegs, and they do definitely come in handy. What also comes in handy is these, just a pair of pliers. Excessive, I'm sure, in size, but works just as well as if you had a smaller pair of pliers. These can become your best friend when it comes, especially for me reviewing. These come in handy quite frequently. If you are somebody that changes your hands out quite frequently, not your hands, but the 6 scale figure hands, these come in quite a bit handy. It's just really hard to kind of get your finger in there to pull out ball joints oftentimes. So I just use my pliers, a little trade secret, if you will. And I just pop the ball joint off like so. This is really comes in handy a lot of times. And one of my go-to tools I usually will just have to the side of, just like the side of my desk here while I'm reviewing. Like I said though, she comes with the interchangeable hands, and then she comes with a pair, that would be 2 extra pegs in case you lose them or in case they break. You got some extras there as well. No, I did not forget about the arrow hand. This hand is specifically designed for holding the arrow. It's a tricky feat, but you can slide, let me just show you here, you can slide the feathered portion of the arrow, and it actually does a pretty decent job. The best success at doing this is to put it further back on the hand and just kind of push it forward. It may also help too that you do this without, well, with the hand out of the socket and then put the hand in place after the fact. One of the things you can also do too is take the arrow, or take the bow I should say, you can pull that back as I did at the beginning of this review, and then while you've got that pulled back, which is very kind of difficult for me to do now, take the arrow, slide the arrow into the back of the hand, and then you can have both the bow, the drawn bow, and the arrow. And then you just simply would be attaching it like so if you want to have her looking as if she's drawing back the bow to fire the arrow here. And you want to talk things being your best friend, this would be definitely a best friend of yours. Before you open up and start doing anything with Wonder Woman, I would definitely recommend, no, I would actually say your best bet, check out the instruction guide that came included with her before you start doing anything. Not only is it going to show you exactly how the accessories work, but then in addition to that, it'll also tell you very crucial information about things moving the joints on Wonder Woman. The head isn't so much the issue, it sort of goes without saying. The more crucial end of it though, especially with seamless bodies, is knowing exactly how far, how much give you can actually do to the figure itself. So in the case of Wonder Woman's moving, at least moving her arms outward, you work with about a 60-degree angle. Anything further than that, you do run the risk of adding damage to the joint in the shoulder. Equally, when it comes to moving Wonder Woman's arms forward and back, you have 80 degrees forward, 60 degrees back, and also for the legs, you've got 90 degrees forward and 90-degree bend in the knee. With that all being said, Wonder Woman's articulation is her head tilts not the greatest up. It does also tilt down. It stops to really about there. I mean, it won't tilt up. You won't be able to get real looking distances, looking shots with Wonder Woman. One thing I do really want to mention as well, let me just show you, and I'm only doing this just to show you guys, as you tilt the head up, one can't help but notice that you're going to start seeing a separation here, a gap almost, if you will, forming between the braid and the rest of her head. So that's one of the reasons also why you just don't want to tilt the head too far up, because you are going to be adding stress, and eventually doing it too much, you may run the risk of popping or ripping the pigtail ponytail from the head there of Wonder Woman. But her head does rotate left and right. She doesn't really have too much of an ankle or too much of a head tilt. And then when we get to the ever worrisome arms, which again, I have to admit, having now had the other Wonder Woman as long as I have, I'm not as worried about the arms when it comes to Wonder Woman. That being said though, I would probably move the arms to about there. That's roughly about 60 degrees. Any bit further after that, you're not really being able to know how much stress you're adding to the shoulder joints. And again, being that this is a seamless body that they're using, I would probably keep the arms to about there. And everything really that you're doing, you want to kind of do in slow motions, like slow movements, kind of short movements, as opposed to real steady, you know, consistent, one solid turn, so to speak. The arms do move forward to about, like I said, to about there, and back to about there. I mean, you could, again, move it a little bit further than that, but the caution, of course, should be made. Any little bit of extra beyond the point of what the manual is telling you to do, you're going to be adding some serious damage to this. And this is the last thing you really want to have damaged, because really the joints are encased inside of this sort of silicone material. There's really no way to pinpoint how much give a joint has until, unfortunately, something happens, and then you'll know right after that. She does have a bend in the elbow. And then she also has a rotation in the hand. You've already seen how the hand joints work. Hands hinge back and forth, and again, you have the rotation all the way around. As for her legs actually are one of the few things that you actually have a considerable amount of flexibility or allotment for. Just showing you how the interior works, you have these real giant sockets, and then the ball joints are sitting inside of those. I mean, because of that, you can really do a lot with the legs itself. The legs, however, when it comes to moving them forward, you really don't want to surpass the 90-degree angle. And when it comes to moving them back, you really don't want to add too much more beyond the point of like a 20-degree angle. The knees also do bend, and you get roughly about a 90-degree total on the bend of the knee. It's so interesting because me doing this now, when I first got the Wonder Woman from the Batman v Superman line, I was so overly cautious. Again, just the length of time now that I've had the other piece, I'm a little bit more generous, I think, when it comes to moving this figure. But again, some caution should still be made. This is probably of all the things, the one thing you might want to worry the most about. The feet only really allow you to rotate them back and forth at a 20-degree. It's not so much the peg that you got to worry about. It's actually more so this and the back here that could potentially rip if you move it too far past that 20-degree mark. And just for giggles, there's the undersides of her feet. On the underside, you got trademark DC Comics, and on this side, you've got Hot Toys 2018. You know, at the beginning of this review, I looked at the display stand, and I did some comparisons with this stand to the one we were getting with the Suicide Squad figure releases, in the sense that you're getting a rectangular display stand with an additional front placard attached to the front of it, specific to, of course, the movie and the character in question. The more I look at this Wonder Woman, though, I can't help but also make another comparison to Suicide Squad, or more importantly, Suicide Squad Harley Quinn. Suicide Squad Harley got 2 figure releases, and admittingly, the Prisoner release, the one that I really was on the fence about getting, ended up being a superior Harley Quinn, at least in the face sculpt. I feel the same way, actually, when we're looking at Wonder Woman right here. I didn't really think we needed a training armor Wonder Woman. Although, however, now that I've got her physically in hand, I really appreciate the care and detail that Hot Toys put into this figure release. And even one better, I feel like she's got a superior head sculpt to the one that we got with the Batman v Superman. Similar to Harley Quinn. I thought that the Harley Quinn Prisoner version had a better head sculpt than the first one that we got the first go around. So I wish that I could have actually been able to take this head sculpt off and replace it with the one that we got with the Batman v Superman, because again, I think this one captures Wonder Woman a lot better. Unfortunately, though, I can't change out the hair, so I'm going to keep the superior head sculpt on this body, and only hope that the Justice figure release, the Justice League release of Wonder Woman, is going to have a head sculpt very similar to the one that we got right here. If they do, I really think that's going to be the ultimate Wonder Woman. Still, I would really highly recommend picking this one up for yourself if you're a fan of the Wonder Woman film. And of course, Diana's leading up to her adventures with Steve. I think this is a perfect addition to your collection. If you're interested in picking this one up for yourself, it is currently available over at Sideshow Collectibles. The price point for it is $235 US, which for Canada it works out to be about $315. And they are currently shipping her as we speak. If the price point does seem a little on the high side, don't worry, don't fret. You can also pay in installment plans. I mentioned this over the course of this review a couple of times, that the Justice League version of Wonder Woman, I've currently got on installment plans. I think I've got this month and I've got next month left to pay, and then that Wonder Woman is going to get shipped out, and a review of her will certainly follow. So don't let the price point throw you off. If you are unable to pay $235 up front, Sideshow Collectibles also allows you to pay in installment plans until eventually you get that final, and it's so rewarding to get that final installment plan payment paid, and then you know the figure is going to be shipped to you right after that. Today, though, in the meantime, we were having a look at the Hot Toys Wonder Woman training armor version, which, like I said, is currently available over at Sideshow Collectibles. If you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that little subscribe button down below. We're going to have some more 6-scale figure reviews coming to you in the next little while. Also, while you're at it, make sure you swing over to the home page and just have a look at all the videos that I've posted. With the amount of content that I'm posting on a regular basis, there's a good chance that you may have missed something along the way, and you'll find it all there in the video section of my homepage. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do. By the way, if you've had a chance and you've picked up this Wonder Woman for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you think of this figure. Do you think it's got a better head sculpt than the one we got with Batman v Superman? Always like reading the comments that you guys post. See you guys next time.